بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجه الكريم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh to all. Inshallah ta'ala, today we're going to have scattered thoughts as the reader had a family emergency and she will not be able to join us today. So inshallah, what we will do is we'll make up the reading with more each day until we catch up, inshallah, back to our scheduled amount of reading. So over the next few days, we'll add more reading to each 30th till we catch up, inshallah ta'ala. But our intention is that we will finish our first reading of the Quran be held during Ramadan. And then after Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, we'll go through it from Ramadan to Ramadan with more details. But today, I wanted to clarify and address our position here at Masjid Muhammad, here on our platforms, and myself as the Imam of Masjid Muhammad and the one who is organizing all of these programs, the African American Islamic Summit, the Black Imams Roundtable, and all of these. So many questions were asked, and some even criticisms or accusations were made that, since I have the time, let me clarify them. Most of this, all of you already know, and it will be a review for you or a clarification. And for some of you, because since a lot of you are coming, since we've been reading this Quran with explanations, so you are new to our programs and what we do and our methodology. So we have a family code that we use on all of our programs, and you will notice mostly everybody who's really in this family and been with us for years, you'll notice that they would say Assalamu alaikum, and then after that they would put 3453 family or 3453. And that is our way of identifying that we're all on the same methodology. So whenever you see 3453 or 3453 family, you would know that that code represents our practice. So I'll summarize it quickly. When we use these numbers 3453, and we can say family because we've been together for years now, and over these years, walillahi alhamd, we've developed a bond and a a family atmosphere among us. So 3453 represents our overall methodology. If you wanted to summarize the understanding of Islam, proper, traditional Sunni Islam that has reached us from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to our time today, that 3453 can kind of summarize the whole deen. And those numbers is why we selected, right, these numbers. So the first three, it indicates, it's an ishara, it's an indication to the famous hadith of Jibril, which is related in Imam al-Bukhari's Sahih as well as Imam Muslim's from the route of Umar ibn al-Khattab and also from the route of Abu Huraira. The most famous narration, the narration by Imam Muslim, which you hear most of the time. And in that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ emphasized that Jibril came to teach the companions the religion, the deen of Islam. And three main things were mentioned. He asked the Prophet about Islam, al-Iman, and al-Ihsan. So when he asked about Iman, Islam, the Prophet ﷺ responded that Islam is that you worship nothing but Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, or that you know that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, that you establish the prayer, you pay the zakah, you fast in Ramadan, you perform Hajj to the house if you have a way. Then when he asked him about al-Iman, he said al-Iman is to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messenger, the day of judgment, the last day, and the qadr, the decree, both it's good and bad. Then he asked him about al-Ihsan, and the Prophet ﷺ said, Ihsan is that you worship Allah Ta'ala as though you see Him, and knowing that you cannot see Him, know that He sees you. Those three answers of the Prophet ﷺ in that hadith, the scholars of Islam, they said that it indicates the primary sciences of Islam. So al-Iman, it indicates al-Aqidah or ilm al-Aqidah, the science of the creed. Al-Fiqh or al-Islam indicates the science of al-Fiqh. And al-Ihsan indicates the science of Tasawwuf. So from that, we understand, and Sunni Muslims, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, have always understood that the primary sciences of Islam are the science of the creed, the belief, ilm al-Aqidah, the science of the practical rules of the religion or jurisprudence, ilm al-Fiqh, and the science of spirituality, ilm al-Tasawwuf. So for us, all of us who attend these platforms and these classes, all of us follow these main sciences in our Islamic practice. And to follow those sciences correctly, we follow what is called al-madhahib. Right? Al-madhahib are schools of thought. A school of thought is a systematic, structured method of following the different sciences of Islam, mainly the science of Aqidah and the science of al-Fiqh. So in Aqidah, the two madhhabs that are mainstream among Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are al-Ash'ira, or you can say al-Ash'ariyah, and al-Maturidiyya. That's our belief in creed. So the schools we follow, which is the systematic structure from to understand what you're supposed to believe in Islam, we follow one of two schools, the Ash'ari or the Maturidi schools. And I'm going to add something. We do not follow in our methodology a school called Athariya. We don't follow that. However, that doesn't mean, listen closely, that we say they are wrong. It doesn't mean that. In all of their issues, what we have discovered from our context, please listen closely. And if you don't understand, ask. Don't think for yourself without understanding. So if it's not clear, don't interpret in your mind. Ask me. Right? Don't interpret in your mind. Ask. That's all you have to do. Fas'al ahla dhikr in kuntum la ta'lamun. Ask someone who knows if you don't. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, just ask me. Don't think for me. Don't speak for me. Don't twist my words. Listen exactly what I'm saying. Please, it's very important because people get to start thinking and talking. Don't talk for me. I'm good. I talk enough. I talk every day for hours. I know how to speak. I know what I'm trying to say. Just ask me. That's just for those who like to interpret my words, right? So when I say we don't follow the Athari school, because what we've seen today in our context, maybe someone else has seen something different, and for them, they speak from their context. I'm speaking from our context. Every time we hear someone say they're Athari, what that always indicates is another way to promote Wahhabi creed for us. That's what we've seen, that's what we experience, and that's how we look at it. All right, I'm going to put it up. In our context, and this is just for clarification so we all know. No one say, what do they believe? Okay, you know. In our context, and I'm going to be light. I'm not going to go hard or difficult. The so-called Athari school always translate into the Wahhabi belief. That's our experience. We have not seen it different yet. Right? That's the context we see it. Now, for that reason, we don't follow it. Is this clear for everyone? I don't want anyone to say, oh, Imam said no. For us, whenever we hear Athari school and we listen to it and we study it, when somebody is, that's what it translates to. For us. For someone else, it may not. Then that's for you and that's good for you. We don't debate with that. That's not an argument. That's not a discussion. Our discussion is these creeds have always been blended, and when they're expressed, it means the same thing. So we don't follow it. What is traditional Sunniism? We don't find this problem. Ash'ari, Maturidi, we're done with it. Is this clear for everyone? If you have a question, please ask. Don't speak for me, please. Right? And for those who listen, don't allow no one to speak for me. I'm available. You can ask me. So if someone wants to say, Imam Amin said, say, no, we'll talk to Imam Amin. We don't need you to interpret for him. because some people, they interpret for me and they're horrible interpreters and horrible translators. So don't interpret for me, right? All right. So that's the reason why we don't say we're authority. However, when we think of a true, clear authority creed that is valid, right? We mean that they follow what is we call, as Asharis or Maturidis, a tafweed. That means they recite the verses as they came in the Arabic language. They recite the hadith as they came in the Arabic language, and they stop with no explanation, no interpretation, and saying Allah is not like his creation. If that was what someone means by the authority creed, without attributing to Allah bodily attributes, directions, locations, limits, right? If that's what they mean, then that's valid and we accept it. Whether they call it tafweed or something else, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah say that's perfectly fine, right? So that's in terms of the belief, right? Is that clear for everyone? Any questions? No, I want you to stick where I'm at, Nail. If the authority belief is that, we accept it. If it's other than that, we don't accept it, right? That's all I want to make sure we understand from right now. So when we say we're Ash'ari and Maturidi, that's what we mean. If someone says authority and they mean by that, and they understand by that, that they recite the verses of the Quran in the Arabic language that pertain to the attributes of Allah and leave them as they came in Arabic, and then say nothing is like Allah or laysa kamithlihi shay', and they do the same thing with the hadith. They recite the hadith of attributes in Arabic, and then they leave it while not resembling Allah to a creation. That's valid approach. We call that a tafweed among the Ash'aris and Maturidis. They don't have to make a ta'wil, figurative interpretations. It's valid. If they mean by that, by athari, then that is a valid approach, even though we don't call ourselves athari. All right. So that's clear. If anyone has questions on it, you can ask me. Let's move. Al-fiqh. So al-fiqh is al-Islam in the hadith of Jibreel. In fiqh, so we said aqidah, the madhhabs for Ahl Sunnah are the Ash'aris and Maturidis, right? That's in aqidah. So that is our approach, right? Al-fiqh, in the madhhab of al-fiqh are four. They are the Hanafi school, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, and the Hanbali school. Those are the four madhahib that we accept. The Hanafi school, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, and the Hanbali school. So in fiqh practice, we follow one of those four schools. For all of our legal rulings. Now, when I say legal rulings, what am I talking about? I'm talking about acts of worship, like prayer, like fasting, like zakat, like al-Hajj, and everything that relates to it in terms of its conditions, its integrals, and its invalidators, and its recommended matters. All of that, we follow one of those four schools. In terms of marriage and divorce and family matters, we follow one of those schools. In terms of transactional dealings like buying, selling, lending, renting, employing, hiring, etc., safekeeping, we follow one of those. We're not talking about issues of controversy. We're talking about clarifying our path. So we're not worrying about what no one else is doing. What we're concerned about today is so that you clearly understand what we're doing. So I'm not talking about no one else. That's not our concern with this discussion. I want you to know what we're doing. What everyone else is doing is irrelevant to us in this context, in this conversation. It's only to know what we're doing. So what someone else is doing, it doesn't make a difference. I'm talking about what we're doing, right? So I want us to be clear on what we're doing, right? I'm not talking about no one else. So don't think that I'm going to talk about somebody else. I'm not. If I mention someone else, I'm just mentioning to clarify what we're doing, what someone may think that we're doing, what someone else is doing. Other than that, I won't mention no one else. So don't think this is a session that I'm going to be criticizing somebody. I'm not. I'm clarifying our position, what we mean by our 3453 family, what we mean by everything we're doing. That's it. Is this point clear? So anyone who's looking for some tea, it ain't going to be no tea available. You have to wait till we have iftar or something. MashaAllah. So that's for the rules. And the reason why we follow a school is because we want to ensure that all of those acts of worship, right? All of those acts of worship are performed in a valid manner, right? So whether if we're making wudu, or we're praying, or we're fasting, or performing a zakat, or performing hajj, any of those rules, we want to make sure they're done properly. The way Sunni Muslims have traditionally ensured that is by following madhhabs that were formulated by qualified legal jurists at the highest level of Islamic understanding and jurisprudence. So those methodologies are based on the primary sources of Islam, Islamic law, al-Quran, as-Sunnah, al-Ijma', and al-Qiyas. And the great scholars of those madhahib deduce those legal rulings and put them in a systematic structure so that we can practice our religion properly. That's why we follow a madhab, right? So for us, all of us who are 3453 family understand that, and that's the methodology we follow. That's Islam, al-fiqh. The third aspect that Jibril mentioned was al-ihsan, which is an indication to at-tasawwuf, Sufism. We, on these platforms, we teach the method of at-tasawwuf. And at-tasawwuf is a structured way of purifying one's inward state from blameworthy characteristics. Now, so when we say we follow the path of Tasawwuf, or someone say we're Sufis, simply for us, what that means to us is removing all of the blameworthy traits and characteristics that was mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith that the believer should not possess. So there's a methodology of learning how to remove them, and then adorning ourselves with all of the praiseworthy attributes that were mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah that the believer should have, and then we learn to adorn them. Tasawwuf is to learn how to do that in a way when you're not able to do it yourself, right? So here, the way the scholars have traditionally done that is by following at-turuq. At-turuq. And so we don't have madhab in Tasawwuf, we have at-turuq as-Sufiyya. That's the way. Yeah, just at-tasawwuf is spelled like this, right? So that's spiritual paths. So we consider valid following any of the well-known spiritual paths that our traditional Sunni Muslims follow. And there are many, right? So we don't need to go into them right now. But for us, our tasawwuf is by trying to remove the bad characteristics and adorn with the good ones. And for us, that's work, right? So even when we say Sufi, that doesn't mean we arrived. That means we're trying to follow the path of spiritual rectitude and purification. Even if we're poor at it, we're striving, we're working at it. So that's our aspect of tasawwuf, right? We don't claim to be. We know we're still working on ourselves, all of us, right? As we learned in the beginning of our book, Haqa'iq and Tasawwuf, they said at Tasawwuf, all of it is good manners, akhlaq, characteristics. And whoever outstrips you in good manners and good characteristics, they outstrip you in Sufism, in at Tasawwuf. Simple. The best among us is the one who is best in performing according to the sacred law and adorning himself with praiseworthy characteristics and removing the bad characteristics, performing your obligations, refraining from the prohibitions, and doing extra deeds. That is what we're striving to do by way of tasawwuf. Right? Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. The most noble among you with Allah is the one who is the most pious. That's tasawwuf. Is those three things clear? Any question about those three things? So that's the first three. That's all it represents. And this is the traditional way of Sunni Muslims, has been this way for over 1,000 years. From the time of the Salaf. All of those sciences we take with an unbroken chain of teachers back to those great imams and spiritual masters. So the way we learn those things is by learning from student to teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher in an unbroken chain, which is called the science of al-isnad, or the chain of narration. Right? So that's how we learn it. So every science we learn with a living teacher, right? Living teachers are of different levels. Some are higher than others, some are ranked. So the living teacher is the one who learned the science or learned. So for instance, as we said, you need three things when you want to learn any of these science. You need a living teacher, a student, and a reliable text. If you have those basic three things, you have the ingredients to start learning the science. A living teacher who's learned from living teachers to teachers in an unbroken way to the Prophet ﷺ or to the authors of the books or any science. A student who is aspiring to learn, and a trustworthy text so that you can ensure that the information is correct. When you combine the teacher, the student, the text, you have the methodology in that chain of narration to learn. This is clear? This is our methodology, and anyone who studied with us knows this is how we do it. Everything we talk about, we actually did on these platforms. You've met my teachers, you've heard from my teachers, you've read books with my teachers, you know I have living teachers. You know all of us who study together have living teachers. Some you met, some you didn't meet. You know we're not just people who started doing things on our own. Great scholars from major places all around the world that we sat and we learned and we read with for years. This is our methodology. We are Sunni, right? Okay. Now let's go to the four. The four goes, the four actually is an indication to the book Ihya Ulum ad-Din. Let me just make it easy. Ulum ad-Din by Imam al-Ghazali. Right? So the number four indicates the book Ihya Ulum ad-Din by the great Imam al-Ghazali, who died in the year 505 after Hijrah. In that book, Imam al-Ghazali, who was known as Hujjatul Islam, the proof of Islam, mentioned the Islamic knowledge into four quarters. The first quarter, the quarter of devotions, acts of worship. The second quarter is the quarter of customary practices. The third quarter is the quarter of ruinous characteristics. And the fourth quarter is the quarter of saving characteristics. And in those four quarters, they deal with basically three relationships. The relationship between the servant and his Lord, which is the quarter of acts of worship. The relationship between the servant and the rest of creation, other people, that is the quarter of customary practices. And the relationship between the servant and himself, that is the quarter of ruinous characteristics and the quarter of saving characteristics. So those four quarters give us all the relationships we have in our journey and our wayfaring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So through that book, Imam al-Ghazali tells us in a practical way how to be excellent, which is ihsan, in all of those relationships, right? How do, in every one of these relationships, I worship Allah as though I see him? Imam al-Ghazali in his Ihya Ulum ad-Din gives us the roadmap for that. And that's what we received from our teachers as a methodology, a book, and many of the books are summarized from that book or indicated in that book how we take that path, right? Number five, it indicates the path, the spiritual path, excuse me, number five represents the spiritual path of Imam al-Haddad, which that path, and Imam al-Haddad died in the year 1132 after Hijrah. That path, when Imam al-Haddad was asked about it by his student, Al-Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, Imam al-Haddad said that that path, his path, and the path of his ancestors is knowledge, practice, sincerity, religious caution, and fear of Allah. So knowledge, practice, sincerity, religious caution, and fear of Allah. You can say religious caution, scrupulousness, al-wara. So he said it's al-ilm, amal, al-ikhlas, al-wara, al-khawf min Allah ta'ala. Those five things is a summary of what Imam al-Ghazali mentioned in his book. So in the Ihya, if you wanted to summarize it, it is those 5 things, right? Knowledge, practice of that knowledge, being sincere, being extremely scrupulous, meaning leaving the doubtful so that you don't fall into the unlawful, and fear of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Those 5 things, that's the short path of the Ihya of Imam al-Ghazali, which is an implementation of the hadith of Jibreel. So, and we read the books of those scholars to make sure that we stay on that path. So we've read on our platform the Ihya of Imam al-Ghazali and a summary of that. We read the book of Imam al-Haddad, the book of assistance, the lives of man, the manners of the spiritual wayfarer. We read the books of it. And on this platform, for the years, we've read books of Imam al-Haddad, works of Imam al-Ghazali, Minhaj al-Abidin. We've worked on that. That's the way we stay in that path. And we learn those books from our living teachers. They taught us those books, and we take what we learned from them and we convey it to you. Simple. With an unbroken chain, back to Imam al-Haddad, back to Imam al-Ghazali, back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The last 3 is our practical approach in our daily lives. Right? And that 3 is 3 things. This is how we live our lives every day. And that is the summary of what Imam al-Haddad said. 3, al-ilm, al-amal, and ad-da'wah. And as you know, this is how we live. Learning, knowledge, practicing what we learn, and calling others to Allah and giving da'wah. That's what we do every day. We learn, we practice, and we call others to Allah. That's our methodology. 3, 4, 5, 3. That's it. That summarized a lifetime journey for us, right? And when we get all these things we learn, 3, 4, 5, we try to implement the hadith of Jibreel through the books of Imam al-Ghazali and the books of Imam al-Haddad. At the end of the day, our life is knowledge, practice, and calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we do every day, all of our life. And inshallah, we meet Allah with that. That is the methodology of us. So if you want to know what we're teaching, what we're doing, that's our mission. Now, is any questions about that? Is that clear? So all you got to do is remember 3, 4, 5, 3. You got a whole thing. If you can explain 3, 4, 5, 3, you have the summary of everything we do. Every book we teach, every class we have, everything we do is in 3, 4, 5, 3. And I kindly ask you, any of you who adopt those code numbers and mention yourself as a part of that family, please live it to the best of your ability, right? It is an easy formula that has a methodology that easy for us to remember. Don't abuse it, please. Don't take it somewhere where it doesn't belong. Don't do with it if you know we don't do. Like, actually try to become that and live it, right? And you will be, inshallah, if you perfect it, one of the awliya of Allah. One day, right? And even if it's not known to the people, with Allah, you will have that status of wilaya. If you can live that. If you can live it. That's the big if, right? It's a well mapped out, trustworthy methodology that has been practiced from Muslims for 1,000 years or more now. It works. Muslims all over the world have been living this methodology. And alhamdulillah, it is becoming well known in our African American communities, which it wasn't before. Parts of it, but not as a structured system. we didn't find in our history those who stuck to that and didn't budge, right? And that's why we mention it. That's why we stick to it. That's why we don't deviate from it. So it's always in front of us all the time, right? And then when you go to learn with others, they should have this similar methodology. You can use this methodology as a scale for everything else, right? Is a scale. No matter who you run into, just put the scale in front of them. If they weigh up to the scale, you know you got a traditional Sunni. If they deviate from that scale, know they deviated and find out the issues where they deviate and avoid it. That's it. Very simple. That's our deen. That's what we stand by. That's what we were raised upon. That's what we live upon. And inshallah, that's what we die upon. This methodology is the methodology we were raised upon as students. This is the methodology as adults and teachers and as an imam. This is how I live. And inshallah, this is how I die. Right? Y'all have it? Is it clear? Any ambiguity? Is anyone confused? Any clarifications need to be made? Please, because we're going to go back to Quran when our reader comes back tomorrow. So I'm giving you, this was an opportunity for you to ask for any clarifications if you didn't understand. I think it would be a perfect time. We could cover it briefly. For some people, it renews things you already know. For some, it gives you new information. And for some, it clears up confusion, right? Now, in terms of the Black Imams Roundtable or the summit, right? And let me put this link for the summit up there too. For those who didn't get tickets yet, we want you to have the opportunity to get your tickets. Okay. So people ask for clarification, why do you have the Black Imams Roundtable? Why do you have the African American Islamic Summit? It's very simple, right? If you don't have proper socks, yes, you cannot wipe over your socks. The best socks to use if you're going to wipe over are leather socks to just make it easy. But there are rules to that. When we studied Sulam at-Tawfiq, the ladders of success, and al-Maqasid, we talked about all the rules of the socks. But in general, if you have leather socks, you can wipe over them. If not, take your socks off. So why African American Islamic Summit? Why Black Imams Roundtable? Why we can't just have Imams Roundtable and Islamic Summit? Because one of our focuses, after those primary focuses, which is the knowledge, is the African American Black Muslim community. It is our belief and our feeling that our community has been severely neglected and underserved in its needs, right? That's our conviction and our feeling and our experience. Keep in mind this. Please, can everyone put this up? Whenever we speak, we're speaking from our context. Can you put that up, please? Because I think people don't realize that. Whenever we speak, we're speaking from our context. And you need to understand our speech within our context. If you don't understand our context, you're always going to misunderstand what we're saying. Whenever we speak, we're speaking within our context. Please put that up. This is very important that you understand. Thank you. Right? When we speak, that's how we're speaking. So, from our context, what do we learn? That our community, and we have experienced this from learning, that all these things we mentioned in 3453 is not well established within our communities. All that methodology that I just talked about for the last 40 minutes, 3453, and all it entails, that's not well known in our communities. And because it's not well known and emphasized and established, we're still suffering from many ills in our communities that those things, that methodology would fix. So not only do we have to learn that methodology, we have to learn it within the context of our community and the struggles and challenges and obstacles that we have. And never, and I emphasize the word never, has that been done consistently. It's always been broken and interrupted, or undermined, or sabotaged. So we constantly have to go back to ground one to get it done. And I'm telling you something. Right now, what we're doing is historical. We're making history right now. Most people who are making history at the time they're doing it don't realize their significance. They don't realize the impact they're going to have on the narrative of our communities for the coming generations. They don't think like that. They're just in the struggle. But for us, we want to be people who realize, yes, we're in the struggle, but this struggle that we're in today is going to be liberation for those who come after us. So all these classes, everything we're teaching, all these books, all the teachers, all the stuff that we're doing will be preserved for the coming generations. They won't have to do it over, inshallah, if we do a good job at what we're doing. So they won't be sitting around asking the same questions we're asking, because we actually did the work. And we will learn from their history, from our history, from those who preceded us. We observe what they did. We observe the good. We observe the mistakes. We observe the shortcomings. And we're trying to fix it for ourselves so that the next generation don't have to do it over. So that needs to be focused on. It needs to be A1, the first priority for us, because it has never been a priority for us where it is established, or we wouldn't be talking about what we're talking about. We wouldn't have to. It's been done already. But I'm going to be honest with you, and this is my experience. We don't see well-established Sunni communities on that methodology that we mentioned without it being foggy, confusing, compromised. It's always can't just be pure Sunni Islam. It always has some other stuff. And anyone who would be honest would see it. It's obvious, right? We may make excuses for the obvious, but it is obvious. So what we're trying to do is have a pure Sunni methodology in front of the African American community that they can adopt and follow and learn and spread. That's all we're trying to establish. That's it. As a way to build us up as a part of the Muslim Ummah, that we can be contributors and benefit in future generations. That's it. We have no other objective, right? But that's a lot of work, as you can see. That's not something that's easy. It's not accomplished with ease. It takes sacrifice. It will take your life, to be honest. And that makes it more difficult difficult for us because a lot of us don't even understand its importance. We talk, but we're not really on the front lines working. Not in all aspects. We make in some parts. But really, when it comes to educating and teaching and establishing and being firm and confronting all the roadblocks and obstacles that are presented in front of you to convey this knowledge, most people ain't cut like that. And we'll find them flip-flopping and waffling all over the place, right? And that's not going to help us as a people. There needs to be a steadfast, firm, merciful, but firm methodology that we can practice. We can't keep doing it over and over and over and over, and every 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we feel like we was all mistaken. And that's happened a lot. We have to get this right. And we have to concentrate on our communities and getting it right. And there's a lot, and no one person can do that. Hence, that's why we have the summit, right? We have to work together. We have to sit down and really discuss our differences and learn how to work through them because they're real. We are, as a community, are slowly disappearing. I'm telling you, I watch. Ineffectiveness. No one cares about Black Muslims in terms of African Americans and what their opinion is and what they say. No one cares. They don't care at all. And that's not every single individual. I'm talking about as a whole, no one considers our opinion. No one considers our thoughts, and they just want us to follow. That's it. To me, that's slavery. That's how I look at it. When you have no opinion, no involvement, you just receive orders and follow, you a slave. That's how I look at it. When you can't have no real input, no substantial involvement, you're only a person who follows instructions, takes orders, and gets permission, and follows the party line without any involvement for you or your children, you're a slave. That's how I look at it. And I refuse to be a slave. My people, before the Islam, they understood it, they fought against slavery because we were actually slaves. We were enslaved on these shores of America. And we fought for generations to get out of that, not to become Muslims and go right back into it mentally. Absolutely not. And if our children continue to see us, as we have observed, in a servitude position, they're going to leave Islam. As we have been observing, our children are disappearing. You can go to a lot of masjids and you won't see the youth. And I'm telling you, I firmly believe one of the reasons because we have surrendered our own honor and dignity and leadership to others. And our children are not doing that. There's the children out in the streets objecting to racism and classism in the society. They're not coming to religion to be a servant class. They're not going to do that. No, they're not going to do it. And they'll just be like, I respect you, mom and dad, but I ain't having none of that. So until we establish our own leadership and institutions that have respect, that are prosperous and successful, we're looking at losing our children. So for us, it's a major concern. And I'm old enough to have grandchildren. So I know it's serious. I know how important it is, right? And I've seen enough decades of us losing our children by following someone else's leadership that doesn't understand our context. That doesn't work. And all I've seen is people take our resources, build for themselves, and we stay in the same position. That's all I've watched. And I'm talking about 40 years of watching this. To today, you find us still talking about what we were doing in the 60s and the 70s. Remember when we had the DAR? Okay, where's it at now? Oh, you know, somebody came and separated and some foreigner or immigrant, and now it all fell apart. Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. It only exists, right? We can't keep doing that. We have to learn a lesson. That's my point. All of our institutions that we've tried to put together as a community have all been infiltrated, have all fell apart, and they don't exist today. And they're slowly crumbling. And even if they exist, they're crumbling. We have to fix this issue. And like I said, I'm not all inclusive of every single individual. I'm talking about, because here's one of the things that I think we forget. Because I'm doing good, or you're individually doing good, that doesn't represent the rest of us who are struggling. Right? Sometimes we get like this. I'm straight. I know you got $1 million, but the rest of them are living in poverty. So because you have $1 million and then 90% of the people are struggling, does that mean we have succeeded or you succeeded? No, you succeeded. We struggling. And it only works when we're succeeding. When it's the majority of us is succeeding and a few of us are struggling, then maybe we can start, celebrating and spiking the ball. But while the majority of us are still suffering, still unlearning of the deen, still following deviant concepts, still having economic struggles, still having educational struggles, still can't find employment, still having family relationship problems and issues, can't maintain marriages, children drifting away. As long as we still got all these issues, then we need to be a priority. Even if some of us don't have all those issues, if too many of us have those issues, we all got a problem. If y'all follow what I'm saying. And until we start thinking like that, somebody going to be 50 years talking the same stuff. Like we're 50 years talking the same stuff. We can't continue like this. So we have to do something. And who's going to do that? It's the job of the leaders and influencers in our communities to come together, to put this work together, to figure out what we have to do. That's what we have to do. And that's difficult for us to do in and of itself. To work together and solve our differences and see where our common needs are and assess them and come together and make it happen. That's a struggle. That's not easy. You think it's easy putting on this summit? It's not. You know how difficult it is to get us all to the table? Because everybody's in survival mode. That's one struggle in of itself. To say, listen, I know you're struggling. I know you're struggling. I know you're struggling. Let's put our struggles aside together for a moment. Let's come together collectively and let's try to build, even though we all individually got our own struggles. Just could you put that together, put that to the side for a weekend? Just for a weekend, let us come together and try to do something. And then hopefully continue collectively in a continuous manner, even if slowly, even if gradually, so that we can get somewhere for all of us, right? So we can bring our resources together to show the abilities that we have, so that we can network with one another, so that we can see best practices, so we can help each other. But to do that, that is difficult. Somebody got to be willing to carry that burden, because most of us individually can't do it. Y'all understand what I'm saying? So that's why we need Black Imams Roundtable, African American Islamic Summit, because others, they take care of their stuff, right? They take care of their stuff. And if we look at other organizations, alphabet organizations, we're not a part of that. We may be an invited guest to give a talk. We're not running nothing. And the resources for that don't affect us. It don't change our situation. They've been in for decades. They've been in established. But how has our situation changed as a Black African American Muslim community? It hasn't. Them resources don't come to us. They don't help us. Except, to be frank, when they need a picture to raise more money for their efforts, they'll use us. They'll come give us some token gifts, some food, take some pictures, and then they're done with it. Most of the time. And we all know. We've been through it, right? It's time we do for ourselves. It's time we do for ourselves. That doesn't mean we have hostility to someone else. It just means we realize that we are important and we count and we need to take care of ourselves. And if we are whole, we are better for the ummah. But like this, we're no help for ourselves or for the ummah. That's the job. And there is a lot of good among us. We need to solidify that good so it's accessible to all of us. There's so much good in our communities, so many success stories, but they're scattered. We need to put them to make them available to us, right? To make it accessible, knowledge, careers, counseling, all the stuff that we need, financial resources, everything we need to put it in a structured system that's available for all of us who want to do good. That's what this whole thing is about, right? So I hope that cleared everything. If there's a few questions, we'll take them. We still have a couple minutes to keep with our normal time, but feel free. But if you cannot make the summit, I ask you to share the link, share the flyer, spread it. Attendance is very good this year so far. We want it to go higher. We want to maximize as much as we can. But let's get this done, inshallah ta'ala, it's going to be, I believe, one of the best summits we've had so far. We have way more people involved than what we have on the flyer. We have some surprises. It's going to be nice, inshallah. So if there's any questions, please feel free. I hope those issues clarified our stance, our methodology, what we're about, what we're doing, why we're doing it. I think I summarized mostly everything. And you are a great part to make this work. Just the fact that every day you're steadfast in attending these lessons, over time, inshallah, we'll get it, right? So, and also spread the word, share the videos, share with your friends and family, and let us make this grow. Because we have a lot of work to do, trust me. And the work that we're doing behind the scenes is much more than we're doing in front. And inshallah, you'll see over the next few years, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us life, you're going to see this grow and 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 grow. And you're at the beginning stages. We're only 3 years out in terms of this 3453 family. It's only been like 3 years. And We've done a lot in 3 years. Amazing things that we've done in 3 years. So imagine we keep working, we keep building, right? We keep doing the work. This is the 5th summit. So we've been able to keep going in, consecutive years now. And inshallah ta'ala, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing. Just keep the support and share. Inshallah ta'ala, tonight, remember the Black Imams Roundtable will be at 6 o'clock. And this is our Ramadan reminders and reflections. So we'll see y'all tonight, inshallah, the Black Imams Roundtable. Remember, we changed the time because of Ramadan and iftar and all that. So we're starting at 6 o'clock. So it's during the Asr time for Ramadan so that we're all available. And let me say this. We are working hand in hand with whoever has a similar outlook. Don't have to be the exact same as what we're saying, but it shares ideas. We want to tie hands and cooperate and work together with whoever is trying to do that. So may Allah tabarak wa ta'ala make us all successful. Barakallahu fikum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.